Hello and welcome to Hank Games Without Hank. We're playing the West Ham Hammers, and we are the Swindon Town Swoodly Poopers. We're wearing white today because even though it's only October, it's raining in England, but it's below freezing, so it's coming down as snow. We're going to do our best to win this game, but, you know, let's remember that we're trying to keep our expectations low. And Scott McBeanie is our referee, so that's something. They've got a green playing in goal. That never bodes well for us. We always struggle against greens. And we've also got a green playing up front, but this time he's playing with Stone Cold Steve with the C. Austin because Bald John Green is tired. But don't worry, back in goal, we've got Ricardo, the Bunsen, Berna. All right. Today I'm going to talk to you about my kind of early life as a writer. When I was starting out in the years after college, and in doing that, maybe hopefully give you some writing advice. So when I graduated from college, I really liked writing, but I I'd done some creative writing classes and that kind of thing, but I didn't have any real writing opportunities. So I want to talk about some of the first writing opportunities that came my way and how they came my way. The first time I was ever published in a magazine, it happened to be the greatest magazine of all time. I don't know how many of you will be familiar with Might magazine, but if you're not, you should be. Dave Eggers, who is now a famous and massively best-selling author, before he was famous, was the editor of this magazine, Might magazine. Which was the coolest. It was a hipster magazine before hipsters were a thing, and it made everything beautiful and nothing hurt. They never had any financial success as a magazine, but everyone, a whole generation of people, myself included, looked to it for inspiration. Writers like David Foster Wallace and Amy Krauss Rosenthal, who would later be hugely influential in my life. Wrote for Might, and as did Eggers himself, and lots of other people who would later be part of the McSweeney's community, and then part of 826 Valencia, one of the most interesting ideas that ever came out of book publishing. So that the first time I was ever published, someone wrote an article. Can't remember who wrote the article. I think it's that. Who was it? I don't remember. I think it's somebody who now works for Newsweek, though. And he basically made an argument that college was not worth it, that college was a bad investment. An argument that these days is pretty common, but at the time was very rare. And I was pretty fascinated by it as a college student myself at a private institution in the liberal arts. And so I wrote a letter, and it was kind of funny, I guess, and they published it. I could never tell if they published it because they thought my letter was funny or if because they were trying to make fun of me, but regardless, they published it. Thereafter, I would always say that I had been published in Might magazine, even though it wasn't really true. So that was the first time I ever got published, and that was by reaching out to someone at basically by writing a letter to a cool, hip place that I knew about because I was trying to pay attention to what was like cool and hip. Oh, you got to put that in the goal. Stone Cold Steve with a C. Austin. That's got to be a goal. But it turns out that letter would come in handy years later, which is one of the things I want to say. Take the time to find cool places that aren't famous yet, and try to establish yourself with people who are doing work, people you admire who are doing work in those places, because they probably don't have a lot of fans. You know, they're probably not. They don't experience an inundation of fan mail, and so it can mean a lot to them. And I think that's a really useful thing. Then I graduated from college, and I had, along the way, I had friends from college who were writers, some of whom were very good writers. Thank you, Berna. And one of those friends introduced me to a web magazine, which used to be a big thing, called Knot Mag, K-N-O-T Mag. And I started talking to the editor of that magazine online, and she invited me to try to write for them. And I did. I wrote several pieces for them. Hank ended up writing a column for them when he was still in college. And I really enjoyed that. And also, while I was there, I was writing I got to know several talented writers who also wrote for that magazine, including Will Leach, who's now a former editor of Deadspin and now is an author of books. He's written novels and nonfiction books. He's a very, very good writer. And also Claire Zulke, a Chicago writer who runs Zulke.com and had a novel out with Penguin called An Off Year. The Off Year? I can't remember. Anyways, a really good book, even though I can't remember the title of it. And a bunch of other writers who also A.J. Delorio and other people who later went on to great successes. And writing with them was really helpful because I was writing with a group of people who were talented, but very, very hungry, very, very ambitious. And as they grew and as they have found opportunities, we were sort of able to help each other. Another thing that happened early on in the years after college, in the months after college, was I met, it's 0-0 here at halftime. One of my high school friends helped start a magazine called Mental Floss. It's a trivia magazine that also now has a popular online presence and a really popular website, great Twitter feed. There's a lot to love about Mental Floss. But when Mental Floss was first starting out, I mean, even in their first 3 or 4 issues, they reached out to me, and I wrote an early cover story for them about saints and sinners, and that was the first time that I think that was the first time I ever got paid to write anything, really. And that was really, really exciting, both because I was working with a great editor and because for the first time I was, like in a magazine that had actual readers. And that was when I caught the bug for, wanting to be read. So I worked with Mental Floss quite a lot in the first months after college, and that opportunity came about because of someone that I knew from high school who had read some of my writing online and thought that it was good and wanted to give me this chance. And there will always be people from your high school or from your college or whatever who are doing things that are interesting that you want to be involved in. The key is showing those people that you have talent and ability. And that's where I think blogging and writing for nonprofit magazines and that kind of thing, that's where that stuff comes in for me. Not a great free kick there from Stone Cold Steve with the C. Austin. Probably should just stop trying to score on free kicks because it's clearly never going to happen. Oh! Devastation in Swindon Town. It should have, it could have, but it wasn't. Oh, did he save it? He did save it. All right. Well, at least I get a corner kick out of it. One size fits all. I'm looking for you, baby. I'm looking for you, one size. I hit the wrong button. I apologize to my family. At that same time, I'd gotten a job working at Booklist, which I got because I got it through a temp agency, and I was just incredibly, incredibly lucky. So some lessons from this: A, be incredibly, incredibly lucky. B, work your connections. Don't be afraid to network with people. And C, don't be afraid to work for free if you're working with interesting people and doing stuff that you're passionate about. It's in the... Oh, it had to be in the goal, but it wasn't. Oh. Other John Green coming up short. So, I got incredibly lucky to get a job as a publishing assistant as a temp, but they didn't have to hire me on full time. I had to go and, prove that I wasn't a doofus. And I did a reasonably good job of that, I guess, because they did hire me. And then eventually, after a long time just doing mostly data entry at Booklist, I was offered the opportunity to review some books, mostly about the Islamic world, because I knew a lot about Islam just from my... Oh! It's in the goal! It's in the goal! I don't know how it got... Oh, it's not. How is it not? Oh, he was offside. Oh, all of our celebration was for naught, my friends. I thought Stone Cold Steve with the C. Austin has scored a goal, but he hasn't. So I was eventually able to, there was something that I knew a lot about, and they gave me the opportunity to write about it, and I did a good enough job that they kept giving me opportunities to write. And writing those book reviews, it only paid $20 a review. But it was work that I was really, really passionate about and excited to do. And so even though it took, on average 10 hours to read a book and 2 hours to review it, I was still really, really grateful for that work. And I think that was a fantastic apprenticeship for me. One size fits all. He can't score, but he did a good shot and forced a save. So sorry, I'm getting a call. If you can hear that in the background, I apologize. That was important. But the most important thing was that Amy Krauss Rosenthal one day emailed Booklist, and in my response to her, I wrote her a response about. She emailed me. I can't remember what it was about. I think about a review of something that she'd done that we had reviewed, and I had to like get a physical copy of the review for her, because I was pretty low on the totem pole, and that was part of my job. And I wrote back and I said, I just have to tell you that you used to write for Might Magazine about 8 years ago, and the stuff that you wrote for Might Magazine was so sweet and so funny and so thoughtful, and I still think about it. And she'd done this thing where she had people around the city of Chicago, all kinds of strangers, touch her pregnant belly. And so I said, I wonder if the kid involved in that is now old enough to see that and what they think of it. And she wrote me back, and she said, "Oh, that's so nice that you remember that I wrote that stuff so long ago. That seems like a different person, and about her child and everything." And that's not a foul. Come on. And then asked me, and then after a couple more emails back and forth, she asked me if I had anything that was a minute or two long that would be appropriate for the NPR station in Chicago. And I said, yes, I do. Which was a lie. But that night I went home and I wrote a little stupid, in retrospect, kind of self-indulgent radio piece about my ex-girlfriends and Googling them. Great save there. That was a third-degree burner. That could have ruined the game for us. And they put it on the radio, and people liked it, and I kept getting to be on the radio. And between being on the radio and working so much for Metal Floss and working a lot for Booklist, when I went with my first novel to Penguin, they said, this is a guy who clearly has some experience. And I think that's really what made it possible for Looking for Alaska to become a book, because my editor had to show great faith in Looking for Alaska, because certainly when she received it, it was not very good, and she had to believe that it would be publishable. And so that's my advice, and that's my story. Thanks for watching. Best wishes.